would go to bed without food. And then I grew up in a rural area where backyard gardening was part of our lifestyle and another method or a channel of getting food. However, as years go by, I see a massive change, unfortunately, not a positive one. Meanwhile, the rate of poverty and food insecurity is growing. The motivation for gardening is depreciating on the other side. So my assumption is that people are no longer seeing a value in gardening, or if they do see a value, they are ignorant. Thus, I assume that people need more of informative, persuasive, or educative programs that will promote the importance of using their own resources, which is in this case of food, it will be land for food production. So that means the educative or persuasive initiatives should be based on community strengths and potentials. Also, they should involve highlighting the resources, the skills, and the experience available in our communities that can help in bettering our lives. So in this case, people will be encouraged or should be encouraged and empowered to utilize what they already have, which is in this case, the small land that they own in their households to produce food. Now, if I go to the background of the study, I was just unpacking the motivation from my own personal view. So now, if you go to the background of the study, I think everyone knows or everyone understands that food security is a critical issue in the developing world. And it has been critical because it is linked with poverty. Many homes across the country are food insecure, which means that they suffer from lack of access to stable and affordable food supply. So Eastern Cape happened to be one of the provinces in South Africa that is food insecure. Despite the fact that the province consists of many rural areas that have large and arable agricultural land that can possibly provide channels for food security. So Eastern Cape province has more than 50% of people living in agricultural households. However, it is one of the poorest provinces in South Africa, with most of the municipal districts suffering from massive poverty rates than the national average. And poverty is especially high among agricultural households living in rural areas. Therefore, an integrated process of media's framing of the issue was needed to be outlined in order to evaluate food insecurity significance in media publication that includes media production, content, and media use perspective. So the aim for that will be to inform the public about the enormity of the issue. However, it has been discovered that the coverage of food security related stories is very low, especially in poor communities. So someone will ask me, why local based newspapers? Because we have various media outlets. So local newspapers are more useful in development rather than the big urban newspapers because they provide balanced and critical reports of issues, processes, and events in particular communities. And then local web-based newspapers, on the other hand, are more useful like any other technical media that is available to the public because of its ability to reach wider audience and its participatory mode, which is now when I speak of the participatory mode, I speak of the public being able to participate in their news by commenting and sharing. So most importantly, local-based newspapers have a role of disseminating information and news aimed at betterment of the society and put focus to that particular locale. That means there are these local web newspapers or these local newspapers are published in a specific locality, all in benefit of that local community. And the editorial trust should consequently be able to meet the interest and the needs of that particular locale. And these newspapers are highly accessible form because they are mostly free and they are not profit driven. And then now, someone will ask me, and then where does media fit in food security issues? The media, especially local media outlets, should be having a framework that helps in the production and dissemination of the content that empowers and promotes food security as a critical issue that needs public attention. Because after many accusations and critiques about the media system, in which those critics include one, the perception that media is monopolized, two, that the commercialization of media doesn't concern the interests and rights of the public. And finally, that it produces corrupted culture and dangerously selfish politics. Media had taken a social obligation role to contribute to the improvement of the community by promoting public opinion and creating platforms for development. So the basic assumption of social responsibility theory, which built up this particular study, is that media should accept accountability and achieve certain duties to the public. Therefore, in my assumption and as expected from the local media should produce contents that address social ills, in which they should include food security or any harm that is inflicted upon the minority groups with the aim of finding solutions. And that requires the framing of food security issue in an influential manner. So how does framing an issue in media help? The media, the framing theory, which is also the theory that built up this study, which supplements the social responsibility theory, does agree that the media shapes the way people view current issues. It also reveals that all mediums have control over public opinion if they focus attention on selected issues in an influential and well-documented manner. So the aim would be to encourage a specific understanding, assessment, or resolution. So once media focuses on the issue, people will perceive that issue as important. So in this case, media should focus on food security issue so that people can perceive food insecurity as an important issue and an issue that needs their attention. So framing focus on how media draw the public eye to a specific topic. And then it takes a step further to create a frame through which the audience will comprehend such information. So they don't just publish information. They do have their selection of words in which they are mainly, that purpose is for the public to understand a specific issue in a particular manner. So that means media can regulate the audience's perception and the acceptance of a particular meaning. So framing theory demonstrates how society is influenced by media, which puts it in a good position to influence the public to take a role in food production initiatives if it puts food security as a salient issue. So that was the background of conducting the study. The aim was to find out if these selected local newspapers do frame food security in the Eastern Cape province.
Thank you, Dr. Metula. You mentioned something which is I also had highlighted on your paper when you say the media shapes how people view the world and what they gravitate towards, and it reminds me of the current situation we're in, that just in passing, that when you look at research and everything, you find that reading, research, and writing, it's not something that is very pushed as a thing to be done in the media. And everything is done in short videos, short snippets, and all of that. And once you write something that is beyond a paragraph, people just pass through it, which is, it's because they're so used to reading short things, or rather just having a video. And there's not been a campaign on actually influencing people to read, write, and engage on research. And exactly what you're talking about now when it comes to food security, because I remember the first time I heard about the word food security was when I was at Forte. I was engaging with agricultural students, and for the longest time I didn't understand what they were talking about. And it felt like a far-fetched concept, because it's like, I think the combination of the two words didn't make sense to me. Food and security in one place just didn't click up, and only to find out that this was my daily living experience, that whatever happens in food production affects my accessibility, the kind of quality of food, and the affordability of that food, which is, in the nutshell, food security. And I could imagine that if I myself, as also a student in university, if I couldn't grasp that concept, how much difficult it is in communities that we live in. And I, just before you go to the main findings of my research, I had a question as to did you check on Isoles, or whether they have a sharing, and how big it is? The reason why I'm asking you is because Isolezwe speaks mostly to our people, the vernacular, everything is done in isiXhosa. So in that way, it's easier to penetrate our communities. And I was just interested in understanding if you had gone that far into research as to what is their framing, or rather their position, or how far they've gone in framing food security in their local paper to respond to such crisis.
I haven't thought about that. Isolezwe wasn't part of these selected newspapers. And honestly, I don't have any reason for that, but I only chose those 4 newspapers that were available on that specific time for this specific study. And I must say that what you're saying is very important, because if you want to speak to the people and at the grassroots, you have to speak in the language that they do understand. So covering these stories in indigenous languages makes it more effective. So I haven't looked at it, But yes, it is very important to use indigenous languages or the local languages in this regard.
That means to young researchers, after they have an opportunity to look at that area as to how is newspapers like Isolés, I could imagine even in other provinces, there are newspapers like that, and how much they're covering the issue of food security. And I could imagine how important it is now in time of COVID, because starting from last year to nutritious food, your stomach, it was about what kind of a food you are receiving.
Yes.
And I think that's where everything shifted from just eating food to eating vegetables to eating fruit and all different kinds of nutritious food. And that comes at a cost. And it's not really affordable to many people. And then it paused, and you would have seen that many people started having their own background gardens. They started doing promoting that, guys, can we have our own gardens? Although it was a thing, but I think it became more of a thing. And I think going forward, it's something that will become a part and parcel of our lives, that we grow food in our backyards, because it seems to be a lot cheaper than going to a local market and buy the already grown food. And in moving forward, Doctor, just watching the time, I would love us that you take us through now your main findings, understanding that you had your problem that you wanted to figure out. Now, what were your main findings in that regard?
Okay, yes, sir. This study had 3 objectives, which is firstly, to find out how Eastern Cape local web newspapers frame food security regarding the possibilities of food availability, accessibility, affordability in the Eastern Cape province. And then secondly, the objective was to ascertain those issues about food security that are raised by these Eastern Cape local web newspapers. And then finally, the objective was to establish the extent to which Eastern Cape local web newspaper framing is helpful in ensuring participation, empowerment, and community mobilization for food securing purposes. So some people don't know how does the content analysis go. So this study used qualitative content analysis. So when I use content analysis, I analyze the stories that are published on those newspapers. So the information that I used here is not just the general information, is the information that I've taken from the content of those newspapers. So I used qualitative content analysis in gathering the data and to evaluate the relevance of these 4 selected newspapers. And the newspapers that we understudied were Dispatch Live, Herald Live, The Talk of the Town, and Go and Express. So this approach allowed me to interpret the phenomena in terms of meanings that deduced from the article's content. So you must also note that I looked at the latent or the deeper meaning of the content, not just at the content as it manifests from the articles, but I looked at the deeper meaning. And I investigated it using my thoughts, my insights, and my knowledge. So I want to go to the findings, the summary of the findings. So I'll firstly look at the first objective of the study, which was to find out how Eastern Cape local web newspapers frame food security regarding the possibilities of food availability, accessibility, affordability in the Eastern Cape province. So the study found out that the selected local web newspapers published in Eastern Cape Province do frame food security related content. All of them had content that speaks to possibilities of food availability, accessibility, and affordability in the Eastern Cape. In this regard, from their framing, the study identified channels of food security in the Eastern Cape community, such as natural food production, local food production, livestock production, and smallholder farming. Now, let's look at the natural food production. The content framed natural food production as a channel for food security that is available in the Eastern Cape. Speaking of natural foods in the Eastern Cape, citrus production has been regarded as a powerhouse of South African citrus industry, which accounts for 28% of citrus production in South Africa. Also, it has been revealed that Eastern Cape has the most progressive and successful Black citrus growers in the country and have the most opportunity to generate about 50% of local consumption and over a third of South Africa citrus export. Some staple foods, which are grains and fruits, have positively contributed to informal food trading, and they have increased food security for traders, even though there is still a need for increased state recognition of these traders. Now let's go to the second channel of food security in the Eastern Cape, which is crop production. It has been mentioned as a source of food security, and it has been identified as a food security channel that one can harvest and sell, can create jobs and promote food security. So tea harvesting has been mentioned amongst crops that are available in some parts of the Eastern Cape Province, including New Sikisiki. So tea harvesting has been exemplified amongst the crops that can be used to fight household level poverty and open economic opportunities. Reference was made from a 30-year-old woman who for quite some time has been depending only on harvesting tea leaves to sustain herself and her 3 children. Similarly to a 57-year-old man and his 3 children that are also depending on this tea estate where the man delivers about 40 kg of tea leaves every week. So these instances highlight not only the economic benefit of tea planting, but also a massive role that crop production plays in putting food on the table and in job creation, and in improving rural income for both men and women. Now, let's look at the livestock production as another channel of food that has been found in the Eastern Cape Province. So the content that was analyzed revealed that Eastern Cape has great chances to lead the way as the bread basket of South Africa, because it is a leading in livestock numbers in the whole country by 3.2 million heads of cattle, 7.3 million of sheep, and 2.2 million of goats. On the other hand, the Eastern Cape mohair industry is producing 34% of South Africa's total wool. Moreover, the meat industry and dairy are also central contributors of province's economy. So that shows a massive role that livestock production plays in both global and local economic growth, that if used irresponsible, chances of eradicating poverty that is linked with food security is possible. Also, the literature revealed that growth in the consumption of milk and meat products in developing Asia contributed to high growth of income and rapid urbanization. Meanwhile, the decline of consumption of milk and meat products in the sub-Saharan Africa declined the income. So the demand for livestock production in developing regions such as South Africa is still large. So now let's look at the smallholder farming, which was also found as a channel to food security by these newspapers. Smallholder farming is also put on the forefront of the ways in which people in the Eastern Cape can access food. It is therefore highlighted there that there is need to transform the agricultural sector by unlocking the potential of Eastern Cape smallholder farmers. In that, it has been mentioned that Eastern Water Farmers Association has an initiative to advance the interest of farming community that is situated in and around the Shore Park area in the Eastern Cape. The main objective of this border is to ensure the well-being and the welfare of its members and communities that promotes the needs of farmers. Amongst those farmers, there are beef farmers, dairy farmers, freshwater, fish, game, goats, hydroponics, nurseries, pineapples, and sheep. In addition to that, smallholder farming is also expected to play a significant role in poverty alleviation and rural development by growing rural economy and contributing to sustainable food supply. So smallholder farming contribution to food production, growth, stability, security has been recognized as significant, and their numbers have grown up to 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide. And then we also found local food production as another method of finding food security, or another channel of food security. So local food security has been mentioned as another channel of food security. It has been mentioned that Eastern Cape is an agro-based province, meaning it depends on agricultural products as raw material. Therefore, there is need to increase agricultural productivity to boost food production, achieve food security, sustainable economic development, and this can happen if there is an increase in the whole local grown food that everyone can afford. So after the first objective, I looked at the second objective of the study. The second objective of the study was to ascertain those issues about food security that are raised by these local web newspapers, and I found many of them. So the web newspapers highlighted the following issues that are of concern with regards to food security. It is land redistribution, job creation, and economic growth, drought, corruption, then the labor policies, farm mismanagement and conflicts, and government support. So if we look at land distribution, land distribution has a positive contributing factor to food security. because land restorative initiatives are vital to stimulate the province's growth, to create the connection between individuals, families, communities, culture, and agriculture. So in that regard, land reinstatement seems not to just be about food security issue, but also a social and a cultural concern, because it is more close to someone's identity. However, the content revealed that Black people are restricted to only 13% of the land, and that led to a crippling rural economy and resulted in food insecurity. Therefore, the reinstitution of and redistribution of the land will help in rebuilding a new South African economy, help in kickstarting rural economy, transfer ownership to new class farmers, and create new laws that will strengthen land titles for vulnerable groups such as farm workers. In that, food security could be achieved. However, it has been noted that land could possibly contribute to food security if only those small numbers who benefited from land reinstitution can ensure that it is farmed productively. And if those who benefited could choose to work land over money payout. However, many families who benefited from land reinstitution and distribution chose financial compensation, hence they are still poor. So another factor that has been found in the content of these local newspapers is job creation and economic growth, which might help in eradicating food insecurity. So demonstrating the relationship between farming and job creation, because farming that is aimed at producing food also opens job opportunities and economic growth. That has been exemplified with the nuts factory that is situated in Ngecha and Bashe in the Eastern Cape province, which produces 2,400 tons of nuts per year, in which its labor-intensive operations could bring about 500 jobs in its initial stage and later generated 600 jobs in its full production. Also, this site generates not less than 40 million income to the community annually. And these trees are still productive even after 100 years of existence. So this shows how natural production is sustainable and its extent in producing jobs and in growing the economy with local communities, thereby fighting household hunger that is linked to food insecurity. So in revealing the extent in which farming contributes to economic growth, the selected web newspapers illustrated that agriculture contributed 33.6% of the GDP growth in the second quarter of 2017. Remember that this study was conducted in 2016. So the figures that I am using were taken before 2017 because the study was conducted, before 2016 or in 2016. So the agriculture contributed 33.6% to the GDP growth in the second quarter of 2017, helping the economy to emerge from a technical recession. Also, Eastern Cape crop production contributed a lot to the country's GDP. In that, poultry accounts for 16% of the agriculture gross product value, which is GPV. And then beef is 12%, maize is 11%, and deciduous fruit is 8%, and citrus, I can't remember the figures of the citrus. And then when merged together, they account for 54% of the total agriculture GPP, to the tune of 132 billion during 2015 and 2016 season. However, the distribution of production according to South African regions put Eastern Cape in 5.6% in poultry and 24% in beef, which value of 13.36 million. And then 1% of field crops and 26% of citrus and deciduous fruit are mainly produced in Eastern Cape. So most importantly, Eastern Cape agricultural labor force stands in third place with 11% after Limpopo in South Africa agriculture labor force. So that shows the importance of agricultural sector in the economy of the Eastern Cape province. So now let's look at government support as a contributing factor, as supposedly contributing factor to the food security. The study found out that government support is a key factor to growing and sustaining the agricultural sector. That has been evidenced by the crushing of the 900 million vegetable project that was established to benefit hundreds of families that live under severe poverty in Queenstown, in the Eastern Cape. The project halted due to lack of supply of electricity and water from both Eskom and the Krizani municipality, which are responsible to supply water and electricity for the project. The failed vegetable project demonstrates the effect of lack of the government to support and supervise the agricultural projects. On the other hand, projects that received financial support from Eastern Cape Development Corporation, which is ECDC, and Small Enterprise Agency, which is SEFA, and the Department of Small Business Development, with the aim to assist in plant seedling and in selling them to primary production sites, witnessed some success, unlike the other project that was supplied by the Krizani municipality and Eskom. So that shows the importance of government to facilitate these agricultural initiatives or the projects in order for them to be successful. And then we have poverty and unemployment, which has been found as a contributing factor to food insecurity. So the selected local newspapers portrayed poverty and unemployment as issues that go hand in hand with Eastern Cape food insecurity. Poverty rate is in the province hovers around 70%, with unemployment rate estimated at 30%. So it is the second highest province in the country after Limpopo. However, it has been said that agriculture and agro-processing are amongst the initiatives to alleviate poverty and address levels of development in the Eastern Cape province. In that, agriculture and agro-processing will then help in addressing food security and in alleviating poverty in this province. On the other hand, it has been found out that the instability of the Eastern Cape agricultural sector itself resulted in job losses that ultimately led to poverty. and high rate of unemployment in the Eastern Cape province. So that is the main problem, because the same agriculture that the Eastern Cape province is depending upon has also become a problem because of its instability, and that led to job losses and ultimately led to food insecurity in the province. So job losses in the agricultural sector, which is one of the key sectors of the Eastern Cape economy, contributed to the increase of the unemployment in the Eastern Cape. So another factor that has been found in the content that has been analyzed is the issue of drought. The study find out that even though farming is used as an initiative to fight against issues that contribute to food security, which is poverty, unemployment, and economy, drought is a major factor that can hinder its effectiveness. However, some of the Eastern Cape farmers have found ways to beat it and continue growing crops by using the little water they can access for gardening, in that they make use of drip irrigation in growing crops, which are certain kinds of fruits and vegetables that includes cauliflower, cabbage, to strawberries and garlic. So this study also found the hindrances, the factors that are hindering the process of food security in the Eastern Cape province, which is one of them is the corruption in governance. Corruption is amongst the issues that hinder the promotion of local farming. Therefore, that also affects the process of fighting food insecurity in the province. For instance, department funds that are meant to groom local farmers are being used by state officials for their own benefit, while the poor farmers that are trying to build their futures are denied the opportunity. So in that, corruption and feeble governance are amid the issues that affect people's lives and negatively, and also contributing to the food insecurity in the province. And then we've also found land and labor policies as a factor that could promote or that could positively contribute to the food security in the province. So land and labor policies are the issues that Agriculture Eastern Cape needs to influence in its decision makings on behalf of its members, so that the policy and legislations issues could favor farming, thereby fighting food security issues like poverty, unemployment, and economy. So it has been noted that the land reform initiative like 50-50, the Eastern Cape government reform initiative that was launched between ADO and Kirkwood, benefits farm workers as they receive farm ownership certificates as partial workers. This way, farm workers tend to not just feel as farm workers, but fully fledged farmers. Moreover, the formation of farm workers trust enabled the farm workers to own 50% of the farm, while the management owns 40%, and the IDC owns only 10% of the ownership. And that means farm workers, commercial farmers must work together as part of addressing the land reform and land policies together with socio-economic issues that concern communities, and that includes food security. And then we have farm mismanagement and conflicts that are also negative contributing factors to the food security of the province. So the study found out that the farm mismanagement and conflicts as factors that contribute negatively to Eastern Cape food security. That is demonstrated by the report of conflicts and mismanagement that happened in the Eastern Cape Tea Estate, which led to the shutting down of its operations, a situation that left its workers struggling, in debt, and could not afford food. So now let's look at the third objective and the final objective of this study. So the third objective was to establish the extent to which Eastern Cape local web newspapers framing is helpful in ensuring participation, empowerment, and community mobilization for food securing purposes. So one of the factors that the content has revealed about the extent in which newspapers are helpful in ensuring participation, empowerment, and community mobilization for food securing purposes is promoting local farming. So based on the data collected, it has been found that Eastern Cape local news empower the local farmers in that they have emphasized that the apartheid, after the apartheid era, new laws and policies emerged, and the land ownership has been transferred to new class of farmers. So the development of new policies and land ownership serves as an empowering tool to new class of farmers for them to own and work the land, thereby producing jobs, food, and contribute to the province's economy. And most importantly, this empowerment aims at developing the most rural areas in the Eastern Cape to make a living from their land that they live in. Also, as part of empowering people, the provincial government has spent over 50 million on agricultural development projects with the aim of promoting food production through local farming. Another factor that the study found as a factor that empowers and promoting food security participation is promoting smallholder farming. So the local web newspapers framed smallholder farming as a contributing factor in the provincial levels of food security. Therefore, as part of empowering smallholder farmers, it has been revealed that the South African government committed itself to investing in smallholder farming by giving out 5.5 billion of the national budget to support 435,000 subsistence and smallholder farmers over the next 3 years. So that was from 2017 up to 2020. Also, government committed itself to expand the 200,000 smallholder producers who sell their products to 500,000 smallholders by 2020, which was last year. So furthermore, government vowed to empower smallholder farmers by providing them with what they mostly need, and that includes access to credit, selection of the right seeds, agriculture know-how, land preparation and seeding, management of water, energy and soil, pest, disease and weed control, harvesting and storage, as well as access to the market. Another factor that has been found as empowering in that content is empowerment through land ownership. So as form of empowerment, the selected newspapers reveal that after the apartheid era, new laws and policies emerged and land ownership transferred to new class farmers. With land ownership transfer, new local farmers are empowered to use the land they own to produce food and develop other economic opportunities. So another factor that has been found is agricultural development projects, the financial support. So from the data collected, it has been revealed that government is empowering agricultural community projects by giving them financial support. The government has spent over 500 million on agricultural infrastructure development projects to increase agricultural production. Amongst agricultural projects that have received government support are dams revitalization and irrigation, scheme development, stock water enhancement, livestock handling, and dipping facilities, hydroponics, infrastructure and fencing of arable land, and planting of maize. So these efforts are made to encourage farming that will help in alleviating poverty. So it is also noted that Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency also spent about 350 million in construction of 3 loading ramps and livestock marketing. Those ramps helped in marketing and sale of 1,766 livestock units belonging to communal and emerging commercial farmers in Pedi area. And they generated about 8.5 million incomes for farmers. Another factor that has been found in that content as empowering and as persuading the community to partake in food security issues of food production is government and communities' participation in food security. So in terms of promoting participation in food security, the results have revealed that there is participation showed by government and communities in fighting food insecurity. In that, the results indicate that after the apartheid era, government took responsibility of prioritizing food issue. Also, the results reveal the eagerness of communities to participation in food security reduction actions. In that Buffalo City residents in Eastern Cape Province were cited as examples of communities that had become part of finding solution to food insecurity by adopting vacant plots and turning them into vegetable gardens and minimizing illegal dumping. So it has also been discovered that people's participation in food security involves learning how they can use the soil to feed themselves, and government in monitoring. Government's monitoring is also significant in ensuring that people use their land to produce food. So another one is mobilizing women to partake in food security. So as per community mobilization concerned, the third objective of this study, the results have revealed the call for women to partake in local farming to produce fresh and healthy crops and fill their food basket. More so, it has been suggested that their dedication and patience will be of great importance when they want to join local farming, because it takes a while to harvest. Therefore, the results suggest that the community must decide on what they want to grow and must make sure they know how to execute what their goals are for the project by giving guidance and support to the project. So to this end, women are to be mobilized to take responsibility in production and processing. So all in all, those were the summary of findings for this study. Thank you, Isa.
Thank you, Dr. Matula. You said a mouthful, and as I'm sitting and listening to you, quite a lot of things have come to my mind. As I think about it, the first part would be, I wonder how far would it have been if the project of schools where learners were doing gardening in schools, because I remember when I was still in junior secondary school in grade 8 and grade 9, we had a period for natural sciences, and we had to go to the garden, make the garden and everything else. And in my mind, I was just thinking of how far would have gone as a province and as a country if we had kept that in schools, when young learners like myself learn about agriculture at a very young age, and then it grows to be part of our lives, so much that even beyond junior secondary school and primary, we are still able to farm for ourselves and not wait to be hired, and not find ourselves in this struggle where some people have said that young people don't want to be in agriculture, especially in a way that they'll find themselves with dirty hands and everything. But the second thing, it reminded me of a time when I had a conversation with my friends back when I was still at Forte, and as we read about politics and how China has literally used some of their mountains for food production by studying their soil. And here we are having a land that can produce and still yet not being used efficiently, when countries like China find themselves in a situation where they don't have enough land, and they find and manipulate the soil they have, even in the mountains, to be able to have farming. And in that regard, the last part, as I was thinking through, was that we have, for the part, as far as I've been growing, there've been what they call cooperations in communities, yes, especially yes, with agriculture. That one has been a lucrative one, where corruption has find its roots and planted itself and grew so old, that those were important ways of alleviating poverty, and using and capitalizing on what we good at as a province, production. But the level of corruption and how people would start those corporations, but there's no financial management skills, there's no skills on how to do commercial farming, and many other problems have led to the position that we're in today. And just quickly, with that, as I was listening to you, I'm like, there's a lot that we still need to teach our communities, and there's a lot that we still need to learn as young people, especially when it comes to agriculture, because like you said, the province is dependent on that, especially even for employment, food accessibility to food, making sure that families are having food on a day-to-day basis, not even for selling it or anything. Can you, Doc, quickly take us through your recommendations then, after you found all these things? And of course, I acknowledge and take note of the strides we've made as a province so far in contributing nationally in terms of agriculture. But as I can see from where I'm standing, as I listen to you, there's a very long journey that we still need to travel. And I would like to hear what were some of your recommendations in trying to fast track the process of development of our province when it comes to agriculture.
Okay, so if you remember from my first slides, or from my first, our very first conversation when I unpacked my motivation on how this study came to my mind. I've touched upon the lack of motivation in terms of farming. And then I said, we need more of the persuasive and maybe informative and educative programs that will enable people to take their minds back to their own experiences or to any initiative that will come up with the solutions to food insecurity. And then with that in mind, I came up with the following recommendations because media is still a powerful tool to perform the informative, educative, and persuasive role to the public or to our communities. So local web newspapers should be used as tools to encourage more people to be involved in producing food in Eastern Cape by producing more food security-based content that is not just informing people about the channels of food security that are available in the province, but by teaching them ways and means they need to follow in order for them to produce more food. This includes production, management, and product sale. And then the second one is that local web newspapers should ensure that people become active participants in food security by facilitating the opportunities that are available in food production, informing them about those opportunities and ensuring that these opportunities reach those deserving and those that are in need. So the local newspapers in this case will work as a watchdog for the community. Another recommendation on this study was that the local newspapers should be useful as a tool to facilitate the national development plan actions that are aimed at alleviating poverty, sustaining food supply and rural development, thereby ensuring transparency and accountability to people. And then another one is that local newspapers should have continuous reports that focus on food production initiatives and the progress that has been made to achieve these initiatives. So those were my 4 recommendations that speaks to the role of media in food security. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mantula. I recognize Sabelo Danjana's question, which is I'll ask as we wrap up from our side of the presentation. Dr. Lastly, what I will ask you then is, your focus was on this particular area, and I would like to know what were some of the recommendations in terms of, suggestion in terms of areas that still need more research, or and the question comes from the point of view that maybe someone might have an interest in this, and what are some of the areas that we still as a need more research in the area that you were searching on?
In my area, which is the media and communication, for now, I will just speak to the way of finding out how these news or how these initiatives go to the people that are in need. So in this case, community newspapers should take their role, that we all agree. But if these newspapers still use English in their stories, when they cover their stories, that information might not be effective to our people. And I also think that we still need more of these programs, or we still need more of this research in other mediums, like to investigate how these other mediums tackle the food security related stories. I think the issue of food security has been taken as much as important as other issues like the HIV and AIDS, your cancers, and other deadly issues, because you don't really find it more often in the news coverage. But I think we need programs, even in our community radios, that will speak mainly to the issue of food. Imagine now, if you can find like a 3-year-old that knows, you need to wear a mask. If you don't wear a mask, you'll get COVID-19. Imagine if we were to cover food security related stories in that way that people will, in that way that media will draw attention to the food security, and people will be able to understand it as an important issue that needs their attention.
Thank you, Doctor. Your last part is what is touching me, that media, when it wants, it could play a significant role in the extent that a 2-year-old now knows that if you don't have a mask, then you'll get COVID-19. It speaks of the volume or the significance of media, because that is mostly because everywhere you turn now, be on radio, be on TV, be on Facebook, the adverts and everything, it's about COVID-19. And again, I'll reference one time when I was reading an article as I was doing research, and I read that one of the ways China dealt back in the 70s or 80s, back then, they were having I think they were having cholera or something along those lines, but people were having diarrhea. So it was a hygiene issue. And the only way they were able to beat it up was because it was publicized in newspapers, in TV, everywhere. People were being given ways on how to deal with the issue, which is the same thing as to what is happening to COVID now. So it speaks on the power of the media and how much it can influence on social related issues if we were really taking that much effort. We have one question, Doc, and I think after that we'll have a wrap up. It's from Sabelo Danjana, and he says, firstly he comments like, wow, this is an interesting study. And then he then asks his question, did Doc find anything that promoted people to go to agricultural schools and empower themselves?
From the content, I didn't find anything like that, except that, yes, I do found a piece of writing that encourages graduates to be part of the agricultural initiatives and food production. But in terms of supporting those, the youth, maybe to go to or to follow the field of agriculture or food production, there was nothing like that. But they only needed their support in terms of food production, which is, it recognizes agricultural graduates, but it doesn't show any support in terms of financial support for anyone to embark on the agricultural or food studies.
Thank you, Doctor. And just what you're mentioning, I think then it gives us a highlight of also that studies like agriculture have not been given the limelight to be attractive, or rather being packaged in a way that will be attractive to young people in order for them to pursue agriculture. I think there's still a lot of stigma around pursuing agricultural related subjects, and that is very detrimental for the country, especially if we have such land that can allow us to produce all those things, yet we're not producing enough or not utilizing the land as we should be utilizing it. Because just last, I'm just reminded that when you go the Jogadi side, as we're talking about, it's very cold, and apparently there's certain fruit that can grow there, and they can only grow there because of the advantage of the weather. But that is also not explored. And Joburg is one of the regions in the Eastern Cape that is hit the most by unemployment, high poverty rates. The economic state is very bad. So I think there's still a lot, like you're saying, and I love the fact that there needs to be campaigns on motivating people to go to school and pursue agriculture-related subjects, but for the media also to take more content mostly in a vernacular languages that allow the people to understand. And radio station,
Isa, what is more important about this issue? In 2017, we had a conference, and fortunately in that conference, there were journalists. There was SONEF as well. And as I was presenting my study, that was still in progress at that time. And then one of the journalists said, we cannot always cover food security related content because the government does not fund us with it.
Oh my word, okay. The issues of this country are just too many to count. There's just too many to count and too many to and that's why I love the fact that we're having these conversations, and it's now upon us to find a way and devise ways as to what can we do, because I mean, there are many things that we have done and raised money for as a people. I think this is one of the most important things that we can do, also campaigns and raise money. But the issue is always who's doing the campaign and who's at the forefront, which becomes a challenge if your name is not big enough to attract that kind of funding, then becomes a problem. But I think local web newspapers need that kind of support. Local radio stations need that kind of support in order to talk about it, because again, I was reading on this paper, and back in the day, the writer was saying that children as young as 6, they knew different trees and what they meant and all of that. And you remember that even when you were growing up, you would stand outside, your grandmother will say, it's gonna rain today, it's not gonna rain today, and they'll narrate what it meant. And even on agriculture, you'll know that we'll go to the velds with the parents and you learn all these things, but that has been taken away from our children. And even it was to some extent taken away from us, we're lucky for some of us who grew up in the rural areas that we still got a bit of it, but we have drifted away. Now, the question remains, how do we then move forward? We need the food, we need all those things, but we have moved far away from the very knowledge that we needed. And again, it speaks on our education structure as a country, that's something I'm very interested on in studying about. So it gives me a loophole also to further my study and look at what do we do as a country moving forward. But just one last comment that we had from Awonke, he says, the stigma attached to agricultural practices is worrying, especially in a country where agriculture has proven to be one of the most contributing factors towards economic growth. Just as we're having the conversation, Doc, the one thing that comes up that agriculture remains an important part of our country in moving forward. And if we don't tap into that, because just as I was reading your paper, there was a part where you said the results of the study indicate that local web newspapers frame Eastern Cape Province as an untapped food basket. And that it tells a story of we have not gone where we're supposed to go. And I'm worried that we're moving further away from anything that is agriculture, yet we have this food basket that has so much to produce, but we simply ignoring it. And I think it's taken upon us as parents to instill the love of agriculture, the love of parents to our kids, and maybe motivate their schools to introduce the gardens again and as part and parcel of their programs. But anyway, Doc, thank you very much for your contribution. That was an eye-opener for most of us, and I think a lot of people will come back to this research and just just to reflect and learn from it, because it really touches us all. It really affects all of us. I know even in 5 years' time, someone will come back here when they can't afford certain things and try to remember what you were saying about the need to grow more food ourselves. And from us, the Young Researchers Hub, we thank you for your contribution. And I thank everyone who has listened on live on this seminar today, as we tap on something that is a crisis in South Africa, which is food security, and the sustainable goals of globally also touches on this. And as I say goodnight today, I wish you a great weekend. Please rest. Our bodies are shutting down because our immune systems are just struggling. I know there's a lot we're supposed to do, but please do take a rest if you can. Sanitize. Third wave is hitting the country at a big scale. Sanitize, wear a mask, stay at home if you have to, if there's nothing that requires you to go outside. From me, Isasipin Gosim, your host here at Young Researchers Hub, thank you for your consistent support on this channel, as it allows us to grow into research. And from us, we are ending the live today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Issa.
Yeah. I'm just